This is Transqat, a safe space to stand. Transgender issues, queer people, respectful conversations. I'm host Clare McCarthy. Welcome to Transqat. Before we begin, though, a few words about the school shooting in Minneapolis. Feel free to skip ahead to the next chapter if this subject is too upsetting. On August 27th, a shooter, unable to gain access to Annunciation Catholic School for a planned shooting, opened fire from the outside through the windows. Fletcher Merkel, age 8, is dead. Harper Moisky, age 10, is dead. 18 other people were injured. From information released by officials, the shooting was nihilistic and a glorification of violence for its own sake. On the slide of the shooter's handgun was written, "There is no message." I grieve for the losses. I understand the rage those families and that community must feel. I also believe nothing will be done to prevent any such future loss of life. Sandy Hook, 20 children, 6 adults. Columbine, 12 students, 1 adult. Parkland, 19 children, 3 adults. And here we are, again. In the wake of such horrific events, conservative legislators slip into a well-established pattern, thoughts and prayers, and they unite around the lie that this is not the time to discuss gun control. It would be disrespectful to the families. This time, however, because the shooter was granted a name change in 2020, conservative trolls were able to deflect to a long-running conspiracy theory that there is an epidemic of trans-inflicted violence. There is not. 97% of mass shootings are perpetrated by cisgender white men, period. You want to solve the problem? Focus on where the problem is, and that is not the transgender community. But the far right doesn't want that. They want to exploit, not understand. They want to distract, not prevent, even when it comes to the slaughter of children. Instead, a legislator whose name rhymes with Sailor Screen tweeted, "Gender dysphoria is a mental illness. If they're willing to destroy themselves and how God made them, then they are willing to destroy others," and we saw that happen today. A right-wing YouTuber with almost 4 million followers said, "One thing is very clear. The trans movement is radicalizing the mentally ill into becoming violent terrorists who target children for murder." It's a simple matter of correlation and causation. Being trans does not contribute to mass shootings. Access to guns does. Lack of basic mental health services does. Radicalization by extreme internet content does. A subculture that idolizes previous mass shooters and encourages emulation for nothing more than the thrill of taking lives does. The idea that this one deeply disturbed person represents anything more than that is a lie. Don't believe it. The late attorney, author, activist for children Andrew Vax, in a piece for Parade magazine back in 1998, wrote, "Unconditional love is a popular talk show topic, but it's little understood. All infants are biologically entitled to unconditional love and protection. It is their birthright. It is their parents' birth obligation. There is no such thing as a good baby or a bad baby, which is why love and protectiveness must be unconditional for them all. Unconditional love and protection." I honestly don't know if the shooter's damaged mind was attributable to a lack of those things, and I don't care. That damaged person sowed the wind, and a community in Minneapolis is reaping the whirlwind. I do know that trans youth, despite all the hateful rhetoric by ignorant cowards, deserve unconditional love and protection. Let us stand up for them. Dr. Nicolas Meade is a clinical psychologist and an assistant professor in the Department of Psych at the Yale School of Medicine. He's an attending psychologist at the Yale Pediatric Gender Program, and his research focuses on novel applications of technology, including VR, to help trans and gender diverse youth find affirmation, community, and gender joy. We start the conversation by discussing a paper he co-authored in the Journal of Medical Extended Reality. Meade led a study using Fortell Reality's VR platform for the kids in the program, and it's really cool. I've linked to an article on Fortell's website so you can check it out. To be honest, I prefer virtual to in-person meetings. One of the few benefits of COVID, I suppose. I can multitask while people are talking without seeming disrespectful. But I find it really difficult to look at myself on the screen. There are days when, for me, the dysphoria is palpable, and I would love the option of selecting an avatar to interact for me. Yale's Pediatric Gender Program has had some bad news in the last month. So at about 45 minutes into this conversation, the show includes an update from Dr. Meade about those changes. Spoiler alert, it's not good news. Welcome to Transqat. My research staff tells me that you work at a small college in New Haven. I've got it here, but I wasn't sure how to pronounce it. How do you say that?
Yale School of Medicine.
Yale. So it's just Yale School of Medicine. Got it.
Nicolas Meade. I'm a clinical psychologist with the Yale Gender Program. I'm also an assistant professor at the School of Medicine. But, outside of that, I am just a passionate advocate for trans youth. I'm also like a huge nerd. So like I love things like Star Trek. I love things like space. And
all right, so
really
this is a recurring, not to step on your line there, but this is a recurring question on my show. Which iteration of Star Trek is the best?
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's like asking me like my favorite kid is. Like, I don't know. I think
I have a favorite kid, but that's because I only have the one. So
I think for me, I have to say this because it was the Star Trek that I grew up with, which is The Next Generation. So like that's when I think Star Trek, that's what I think. But I do have a very special place in my heart for Strange New Worlds. Like I know it's brand new, but it's just so beautiful.
I haven't seen that one. I watched most of Discovery and I really liked it.
And you'd love Strange New Worlds. It's truly, truly like getting back to like what Star Trek was meant to be, like just to show about like progress in the future and what we could be if we believed in each other.
I want to come back to that because there's an aspect of technology in what you do that I'm really curious about, but we should probably lay the groundwork for that. So what kind of work do you do at the Yale Gender Project?
So at the gender program, I am an attending psychologist. So most of my work is clinical, right? I'm meeting with youth and their families, helping them navigate just this complex journey of being a human in this world. So I do, interdisciplinary care with our medical providers. I also have individual patients. I do individual and family therapy. I supervise students, but I also do a lot of research. So part of my research is looking at uses of virtual reality and technology to help young folks who, may not have access to things like gender affirming care, still find community, find power, and find really ways to just see themselves as they know they are.
I have tried virtual reality once. I have a former student of mine came over with the headset and he wanted me to see what he was doing because he's a science educator and he's remarkable. But I tried it on and I'm in my living room doing things and it took me so much focus that I forgot what was going on outside. So when I finally took the glasses off, I realized he was videoing me as I'm just flailing around in the living room. So I have a little bit of a caution when I talk about VR, but tell me about how you use that.
Yeah, actually, like what you just brought up is an excellent, kind of segue into that because that's kind of what we're looking for, right? Virtual reality allows folks to be fully immersed in whatever kind of virtual environment they're experiencing. So a lot of times, like folks will be in a virtual environment, and like you said, they kind of lose the world around them, and they're able to fully um, engage with whatever they're looking at. So the use that, primarily like the team that I work with, we're kind of looking at is how do we find affirmation in that way, right? So we did a pilot study with trans youth, and we had them just design avatars that were consistent with how they saw themselves, right? So they could choose any body type, any hair type, any skin color. They could even modify their voice when they were speaking in group. Um, and we just kind of put folks in groups together and said, like, let's talk, let's just have a space to hang out. And the youth responded so positively. They were able to change their avatars from group to group. So if they, found something out about themselves and they're like, oh, actually, I feel like I want to have a more masculine presentation, but I really like my long hair. So I'm going to change my avatar. And it just had this beautiful way of allowing folks to present as they see themselves in an affirmed way with other people and get that immediate kind of feedback. Um, so that's kind of where we're looking long term is how can we provide this kind of sort of like congruence for folks who, might not have access to gender affirming care.
So is this a virtual space that could be accessed remotely, or do folks need to be there with you?
So all of this was done remotely because we originally started this as a result of the COVID lockdowns. So initially we had an in-person group, and this was before I actually started at the gender program. There was an in-person youth group, and then the COVID shutdowns happened, so everything had to shift to virtual, and we noticed the group like numbers just plummeted. Um, and when, folks were kind of asked about it, they didn't want to be on camera, right? Like it was really dysphoria inducing. They could sometimes hear the feedback from their own voice, and it just made it really hard to show up.
Right.
And so we were approached by this lovely team called XR Pediatrics at the Yale School of Medicine. And they were doing this with their youth who were undergoing cancer treatments and chemotherapy. So they also didn't want to be seen on camera for other reasons.
Right.
And so they thought that this might be helpful for our folks. And so when we started that collaboration, we noticed that there was immediate interest. So many youth, because they had already known the technology. They already, most of them had used the headsets before. So there was kind of an immediate interest and immediate familiarity with the medium. And really just, I was present in the groups virtually, and I could hear just the excitement. I could hear the changes as the groups went on. It was so beautiful.
As I say, I only have the one experience of it, but it was very much first person. So I didn't see myself. I just saw the things I was interacting with. How is that different in what you're doing? Because if you've got this avatar, you need to be able to see and hear yourself, right, to get that.
So our first iteration, we did two kind of pilot groups. So the first pilot group was we just kind of used a very rudimentary avatar like customization system, and the youth were like, it was okay, but I don't really love it. And then after that, we took that feedback and integrated the Meta Horizons, I believe, avatar customization. And theirs allows you to see the avatar you're developing. So like you can see the avatar, and they had such an expansive range of what folks could select. And there was also a mirror feature. So like you could see your avatar if you wanted to, you could choose not to see your avatar if you didn't want to. But you always knew what your avatar looked like because you could design it before the group started.
So you could step right in and participate, and you weren't distracted by the tech of it. What a great counterpoint to, I mean, at that point, elementary, middle, high school students, even college students, were so burned out on remote education, where all of their classes were in this medium where, as you say, you're kind of glued to whatever the physicality is, and how freeing to be able to participate in a way where that's not what you're seeing.
Yeah. And it was really interesting. One of like the findings we didn't even expect, so we didn't even ask about this because we didn't know that this would happen, is that all of the participants across both groups um, expressed a desire to meet in person after the study. It was so surprising because some of these folks I knew from, previous experiences, and hearing those folks say, I want to meet these people. I feel like they're my friends. I'd like to meet them in person was incredible.
Which is great because that's, from an outsider, one of the criticisms might be that it's replacing actual human interaction. But to hear that, no, it was a launch pad for that. It allowed me to feel safe. And now that I feel safe, I want to know you. I want to know you as a person beyond the avatar.
Yes.
And just not to go all full circle this early in the conversation, but that's the holodeck, right?
Yep.
That's,
Yes.
I mean, the episodes of Next Generation that always showed us the most in terms of character development and insight were the holodeck episodes where people were immersed in some other reality and you learned how you would interact in a Sherlock Holmes setting or in a whatever, the humanity always came out much more.
Uh, yeah, I think that's so true. Like the thing that comes to my mind is like that episode where, they learn that Captain Picard rides horses, right? And nobody thought about
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And we saw that in the group. There were youth in our group who, I had previous knowledge of. Um, and when they were talking, I learned things about them. They were so open. They were sharing their interests in a way that I had never seen them do before. Um, and I thought that that was such a beautiful, point of connection because then other youth were saying, "Oh, actually, I'm really into that thing too. Can I have your phone number? Can we chat offline?" Um, it was really, really powerful. And I think, like you were saying, kind of a testament to like, this is a stepping stone. This is just how do we get past this initial hurdle so that you see me as me. I feel safe talking to you as me. Um, and now let's meet up. Let's hang out.
Well, we're recording this on video on Zoom, and I'm not at all comfortable seeing myself on camera. I could I could see where that would have been a nice way to dip your toe in but I can't imagine anyone wants to watch an avatar of me either. But yeah, I can see where that would be really comforting. Um, it brings to mind a quote of yours, well, a quote from a paper that you co-authored, I'm going to say 2 or 3 years ago, where you compared gender affirming care to putting out a fire.
Essentially, what the point of our that we were trying to make was you have to understand what you're approaching in order to help solve the issue. So, right, we talk about fires. Like if you have a grease fire, you're never supposed to put water on that. But if people are looking, all they see is a fire, right? All they see is, there are flames in front of them and they want to just throw things at this fire to help, you know, obviously put the fire out. But you have to understand what's going on and have to understand what is actually going to be helpful versus what is just a panicked response.
This episode of Transqat is sponsored by The Book Barn. Located on Niantic Bay, The Book Barn has 3 locations, all within a mile of each other. They've been a Connecticut landmark since 1988. The Book Barn buys 10 to 15,000 used books a week. You can find your favorite novel for $4. Mass market paperbacks are $1. Come find your favorite author or discover something new. There's gorgeous art on display. There are cats and goats and helpful staff in blue t-shirts and a real functioning TARDIS. Well, sort of. Learn more at bookbarnniantic.com or follow them at bookbarnniantic on Instagram. Also, mark your calendars for their annual sale. 30% off their already low prices. The sale runs from October 10th to the 18th. Bring your tote bags. You're going to need them. An assumption that one solution fits all.
Yes.
What brought you to this type of care, to these patients?
Well, to be completely honest with you, I was working at um, a nonprofit organization, kind of doing some case management for um, LGBTQ youth experiencing homelessness before I started grad school. And somebody in that program was head of the mental health services at the time said, "You need to go to grad school. You need to become a therapist." And I was like, "No, no, thank you. I'm okay. I can't do this." And then I started grad school, and I remember thinking like, okay, well, I'll just work with adults. I'll just work with adults. I don't know if I want to work with kids. Um, and then I started doing this kind of collaborative research project with Dr. Lazeski, and really just kind of fell in love with working with like LGBTQ youth, particularly trans and gender expansive youth. Um, and then when I matched for an internship, because I had to do an internship to complete my graduate degree, I remember just day one, I walked into the room and I was sitting there with this young trans kid, probably between 10 or 12 years old, um, who, we do like a mental health check. So, everybody had left the room. It was just me and this kid. And they said to me, "Can I ask you a question?" And I was like, "Oh, I know what's coming." Okay. And I said, "Yeah, sure." And they said, "Are you trans?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And their face just lit up and they said, "You're the oldest trans person I've ever met."
Oh,
And I remember having a moment of like, I remember being that age and being so confused and not seeing an adult who was like me. Um, and I knew that was it. I was like, "Can I surprise you more?" And I know you've met with Tony before. And they said, "Yeah." I said, "I want to introduce you to somebody who's trans, who's older than me."
even older than you?
And I sent them to like Tony Feriolo, and I was like, "Go chat with Tony." And this changed this child's life. But one of the benefits of working in the clinic that I do is we stay with kids until they're in their 20s. And so I've seen this kid since then. I've seen this kid grow up over the last 3 years. That was life changing for them. It was life saving to see an adult who's just alive and doing their own thing and happy.
A person who is not just alive but has a very successful career, and that lets the trans youth know, oh, I there's a future. I can, things are hard, but you can get somewhere. Tell me, to whatever extent you're comfortable, about that journey of yours.
Absolutely. So growing up, I don't think I even heard the word transgender until I was in my 20s. It was just not discussed. Nobody talked about it. Um, but I always kind of knew. I was always kind of like, hmm, there's something about me that is different, and I'm aware of this. Um, but I just didn't have words. I didn't have vocabulary to express what was happening. Um, so I just kind of didn't say anything. And then as I got older, it kind of got to be this more like, okay, well, you need to stop being that way. You got to stop being who you are and start conforming to what society expects of you. So I did all the girly things. I was a cheerleader. I was, on prom court. I went so hard into that direction because I thought that's what was expected. And it really wasn't until I was in my 20s that I met another trans person. And I remember just having this moment of like, oh, that's the word. That's the word I've been looking for. This is a thing. Um, and it was like life saving for me because for so long I just spent my life thinking I was like broken. Like there was something wrong with me. I must be crazy. I must be like, so like there must be something wrong. Um, and then I met this person and they were fine. They were just living their lives and they like talked about, they were an adult advisor for a youth group. And I was like, oh, cool. That's amazing. Um, and it shifted my perspective. And I really, you know, it was really funny. A lot of people were surprised, but um, my now wife at the time, we just started dating. Um, but she's been my best friend since we were little kids, like 8 years old. And so she was the first person I came out to. And she was like, yeah, I'm more. I figured. And I was like, girl, when were you going to tell me? Like,
I
but,
needed help.
right. But I think that was kind of a testament to like the people who saw me, who really saw me. This was
Yeah.
not a surprise, right? They were like, yeah, this is who you are. You've always been this way. And for me, it was like a beautiful journey of learning that I didn't need to fit in any box. I identify as, kind of transmasculine, non-binary, somewhere on that side of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I didn't have to force myself to fit an expectation. And I could just be who I am and exist as I am, and be loved for that person. That was like groundbreaking for me.
And that speaks to the possibility of joy, which I'm sure plays into your work. That given most of the portrayals of folks like us, joy doesn't seem like a possibility.
Yeah.
And that trickles out. I mean, it's certainly a message to trans and gender expansive youth, but it's also a message to their parents and their caregivers that, well, this would be too hard of a life. I should probably discourage you from it. It sends ripples out across the culture, but the reality is that, yeah, there is such a thing as trans joy.
Yeah. And to me, it's so important because for good reasons, we have had to focus on dysphoria, right? We've had to help people who don't experience dysphoria understand the impact and the real pain that comes with it. But because we've been so focused on that, we've missed the joy piece. We've missed the euphoria piece, of what it feels like to be seen for who you are, to be validated as that person, um, and to find like community, to find support. There's a beauty in our community. Really, there's like this deep level of resilience and power and just love and acceptance that I think if people saw more of, they would maybe fear the community a little less.
From what you see in your practice, what effect is all of this rhetoric that's been going on now for close to 4 or 5 years, where people like us have been targeted to motivate the base? What effect are you seeing on kids?
I've been seeing a really profound effect. When I first started at the clinic, I noticed more youth going through a journey of like self-acceptance, right? They were kind of on this path of like, well, I heard this word and this fits me. This is who I am. There was like an excitement, an aliveness. And as this rhetoric has gone up, I've seen more and more kids who will say, like, I know this is who I am, but it's not safe to be that person. And now we have, a lot of folks who are saying, I need to be stealth or I need to pass perfectly. I have to represent the least amount of threat to a person because my life is in danger. I'm seeing more and more kids who are having kind of traumatic stress responses to this rhetoric, that I don't think folks really understand. I think there's a piece that people think, oh, it's just on the news, it's just that. But when you're watching people in your community be hurt, assaulted, killed, rights being taken away, and you're young, they can't even vote yet. They have,
Right.
So little autonomy in this situation. It makes them feel out of control and feel like there's nothing that they can do, that people just don't want them to be around. And I think that is a really um, harmful impact that I don't know that people are paying attention to.
Yeah, and it leads to all sorts of comorbidities, that you're trying to provide gender affirming care, but because of this rhetoric, uh, substance abuse and eating disorders and self-harm, and that those things end up being intertwined because, again, one size doesn't fit all. Are you seeing a rise in those sort of comorbidities?
Yes, I think we are. I think we're seeing a rise in those comorbidities, and again, we're seeing a lot of trauma responses, a rise in sort of, behaviors that look like, PTSD, that look like post-traumatic stress. A lot of our youth are, kind of in PTSD, kind of like my other niche is, trauma work. Um, Part of the diagnosis is having these beliefs about the world being bad, scary, um, or unsafe. And so what we're hearing is some of these core beliefs are happening, right? Folks will say to us like, well, the world is not safe for me. And they're not wrong. And I think that's the hard part is that, people will hear that and say, oh, well, just some parts, right? Some parts aren't. And, but again, when you say that, having to sit with the fact that like, I've talked to kids who have said like, oh, I want to go to college there, but I'm not welcome in that state. I can't live in that state. And just the impact, I had a kid say like, we were going to go to Disney World with my family, but I can't. I don't feel safe. And like missing a family vacation because you can't go to a state. Um, they're just impacts that, we're seeing these comorbidities go up, things like substance abuse, things like self-harm, things like suicidal, ideation expressing, and also folks acting on them. We're seeing, folks attempting suicide as well. Um, Depression, anxiety, all of these things are a result of kind of this awareness, these core beliefs that are being changed because of the world that they're seeing, right? They're not developing these things out of nowhere. They're seeing the world and saying, well, it's not safe. It seems like nobody wants me around.
Yeah, I keep thinking of older kids looking at, Aaron Reed's map of the United States and, states that are not safe for folks like us, and thinking about where do I want to go to college? And 2/3 of the country is flat out saying, I don't want you here.
Yep.
And what that does to a person. How do you balance that? Because I think a person who is not trained the way you are would want to just say something positive, like, oh, okay, no, well, you're safe here and there's this. But you and I first talked at an event in New Haven, looking at the safety of schools here in Connecticut, which has so many more protections than most states, but our kids are still not safe. We can't even say that here in Connecticut gender expansive kids are safe in our schools. So how do you balance that between being honest and helping them toward, I guess hope is the word?
Well, I think the primary ways, and I try to share this with caregivers too, is we want to avoid false positives, right? We want to validate, like, yes, what you're seeing is real. You're not making this up. You're not being dramatic. Um, and letting them know, like, you're not alone. Like telling you, like, you're not alone in this. Like, it's scary, and you're right that it's scary. And you have your support system. You have people, and you're not fighting this fight by yourself. And the second piece is helping folks to connect to the beautiful, resilient history of trans folks. We have been around since people have been around, and this is not the first time this has happened. We have, Erin Reed came and spoke to our program, and she had this beautiful kind of story she shared with us of, that picture that everyone saw in our textbooks of the Nazi book burnings. That is actually, those are books being burned from the first gender affirming care clinic in
That's
Europe.
Magnus Hirschfeld's institute, right?
Yes. And it was really, to me, that was like, wow, I'd never learned this before. And so I started sharing that with more and more youth of like, this has happened before and we are still here. Right? That was way back in the 30s and 40s. And look, we're still here. You're still getting care. You're still with us.
I love that the publishing industry over the last decade or so has just opened up in terms of authentic voices and history, queer history. There was a great slim volume that I was in some way associated with Wesleyan, called Butch Heroes, which was, each page was a piece of artwork and a little, one-page summary of a gender expansive, masculine presenting person. And I think maybe of the whole book, I had heard of one of these people. And it was such a joy to go through. And yeah, you get this sense of, okay, yep, let's settle the anxiety down a bit. This is not new. And that's what's terrifying about this movement to ban books like that from public libraries, from school libraries, is because it can save a kid's life to come across something like that and say, oh, not alone.
And I think it's also, it's good for every kid, right? For kids who might be just like, I don't know what's happening, this sounds weird, right? I come from a family in which education was like very, very important. My grandmother was a teacher and then a supervisor with the New York City public school system. She started so many bilingual education programs. And for her, it was always something that was so important. She would always tell me, and continues to tell me, that children are curious. They want to know about the world. And the more we teach them about other people, the more tolerant we become as a society. Like, the more we grow. Like, children have this beautiful ability to see another kid and say, oh, I'm going to hang out with you, right? They don't have any of those preconceived notions until we give them to them. And so, like, I think especially when we're thinking about like books being banned, it's important to remember, like, that's also a way to like keep people apart, right? If you can't read about somebody else's perspective or their life and appreciate that, you're being kept apart. And I think that is really an implication that I wish more folks understood about these bans.
I know. We're all struggling financially right now. My 23-ounce can of decaf at Stop & Shop is currently $17.49. I was promised grocery prices would drop on day one.
Groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like, almost, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries.
And I have more complaints on grocery. The word grocery, it's sort of simple word, but it sort of means like everything you eat. The stomach is speaking bacon and things going up, double, triple, quadruple.
Guess that's not happening. So I get it. Money's tight. But if you listen to Transqat, consider supporting the show. You can donate at transqat.com/support. You can purchase Transqat merch at the store. And businesses, especially queer-owned and queer-friendly businesses, sponsor the show. My rates are Crazy Eddie low.
Get it now, because Crazy Eddie can't be beat. Crazy Eddie, his prices are insane.
1978. Good times. Well, it keeps it abstract, right? As opposed to, you're a person, I'm a person, and you could sit down and talk to us and have a cup of coffee, or you could pretend we're some abstract, we are transgender. And abstracts are scary because you can't pin them down. But if you can sit down and have a cup of coffee with somebody, then it's just two humans. It makes it much more real, and there's much more to learn there. In terms of your work, I imagine you collaborate with a lot of organizations in the New Haven area, but also in the medical community. What is the status of training medical professionals from your point of view? Because the care isn't going to improve until the medical professionals have the training to meet the needs. Thoughts on that?
I mean, I think especially in the last couple of years, we've seen kind of this beautiful push towards like more inclusive training, more culturally humble, culturally sensitive training. And I think gender affirming care is part of that. I shared even, from the psychological side, I shared with my our clinic director that, in my program, it was being emphasized that everybody needs to be trained in gender affirming care because you're going to have a trans client at some point and you can't just refer them out. And I remember her face being like, wow, when I was training, that wasn't the thought. And so I think we're seeing that in medical education as well, that, there's a beautiful program that one of my colleagues at Yale created where, he is training medical students and fellows and residents to work with trans patients, even if that's not what they're going into, right? It's just the entire class is going to be working with simulated patients who are actual trans folks. And they go in and they do like a normal PCP visit. And how do we do that in an affirming way? How do we make sure that we're sending in appropriate recommendations? How do we make sure that we're, asking pronouns every time? How do we make sure that we're doing this in a way that honors people's autonomy? So what are we putting in the chart? Are we asking them, what would you like in my chart? What do you want to just have me say in the visit?
Right. Because most of the forms are still binary, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you first come in and you complete that endless stream of paperwork, it's still only offering you two choices. One of the episodes that's coming up, I talked with Kay Ravichandran, who is a trans distance runner and also a med student at UVM. And so I was talking with her about her experiences in that. And my sense was that it's a struggle to get this included in the curriculum, in the training, and especially once folks are out of school. There's not a lot of motivation to go get educated on gender affirming care if you're a heart specialist or a bone specialist. It's like, I don't need that.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. I think, it is one of the benefits of working at Yale as like an institution. They have been really committed to innovation. So they have been really open to us kind of going in and training people across the disciplines, across the different fields of medicine, regardless of their degree level, regardless how long they've been a physician. And I think more universities are moving towards that. So more of these academic medical centers are. And that doesn't capture every single physician, right? Because there are a lot of folks who are in private practice who might not be doing that. There might be folks who are just attached to hospitals that aren't academic medical centers. And so we're not able to reach everyone. So I do think this should be a basic competency for every provider.
It certainly makes, I don't know if you've ever had an experience like this, but I have walked out of an appointment because somebody was not skilled enough in how to deal with me. If I correct you once, I expect you to listen to that. And when it kept happening, I just decided, okay, I'm done, which is fine, unless I actually needed the healthcare in that moment. I'm glad it wasn't a crisis, because I would have denied myself healthcare.
I think, that's so valid. It happens so often in our community that I think even when you ask the question, I was like, well, of course that's happened. Like, who hasn't it happened to, right? That, I used to avoid going to the doctor before, I started going to see folks in Connecticut and folks who had a specialization. I would avoid going to the doctor because I knew it was going to be a whole thing. I knew I'd have to like out myself several times. I might be outed in the waiting room. And it would be, all the questions would be about my affirming care, as opposed to like, I might be in there because I sprained my wrist. And I don't necessarily need to talk about my affirming care.
Thank you for asking, but no. I'm in Connecticut. You're in Connecticut. For the folks who might not be familiar with the Yale Gender Clinic, how does one get in touch? What can they expect in terms of, I imagine like all gender affirming centers, there's a limit and there's a time waiting list and stuff, but just for folks who might not be familiar.
So at the gender program, we serve folks youth up to 25-ish. We don't really kick people out of the program, but really it's a space for trans and gender expansive youth and their caregivers to get the appropriate care that they need. And it's not cookie cutter. So it is very much individualized care. We spend a lot of time talking to folks, hearing their stories, and really what folks can expect from our visits is a lot of listening. I joke with all of our patients and I say, your first visit is going to be the longest doctor's appointment of your life. And we do that for a reason, because it's important for us that we have a people first approach. We want to hear everything somebody wants to tell us. We want to give them all the time they need to ask any questions they have. We've had, beautiful interactions where people bring in their phones and say, I saw this video on TikTok and I didn't know if this was a thing or not. And we sit there and we are able to talk to them about it. And folks who, we're based in Connecticut, but we have patients that have traveled to come see us from New York, from Massachusetts, from Rhode Island. We've had folks really kind of, from all parts of the East Coast, just kind of come up to consult with us, to learn more about our program, and to just, talk about their care and what they might like. And so because we have an interdisciplinary team, we have mental health, we have endocrinology, affirming GYN care, we have a legal team as well that supports our folks who might have like legal concerns related to like gender marker name change, but also, things that might be happening at school, parental rights, all that kind of stuff. And so some people come in and they only want certain parts of it, right? So they might say like, I don't really actually want the medical piece. I just want a therapist that I can trust, and I want to talk to your legal person. Okay, that's fine. So we have folks who, can kind of choose your own adventure, I guess. And, making an appointment with us is pretty easy. I would say, like, as long as you have access to the website, you can find us on the Yale Medicine website, from the Yale Pediatric Gender Program. And there are numbers that you can call to make an appointment. We do have a long wait list because, we provide very comprehensive care, so our visits are longer. And so right now, I think we're at about, 12 to 15 months in terms of wait lists, but we also are part of a Connecticut collective of programs that provide gender affirming care, and we try really hard to work with each other collaboratively. And we always provide referrals, so that if somebody is coming to us and they're like, oh, well, I need to come in at this point, we'll try and move them up. And if we can't, we're happy to say like, okay, well, this hospital also has a program. This other hospital has a program. If you're calling from a different state saying like, well, you can call this number, you can call these people. Because really for us, it's not about being the one doing the care. It's about making sure everybody gets the care that they need.
So an awareness of and connections to this network, as wide as possible, Annette. I want to leave the last word to you. Is there anything that I should have asked, haven't asked?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for, chatting with me and inviting me to do this. I think really what's the most important thing for me is I am a person who has a value of hope as one of my top values. And I think the more we can talk about these things, the more we can have these conversations, the more we can remind folks that like, we're not alone. This is a community. We are a big, beautiful, vibrant, resilient community. And there is room for all of us.
Transqat is on the air. The program will be broadcast on WESU 88.1 FM, Middletown, Connecticut, beginning Tuesday, September 9th. Transqat has acquired the coveted 1 to 2 a.m. slot.
And there was much rejoicing.
You can listen either very late Monday night or ridiculously early Tuesday morning, depending on your perspective. It's an honor to be part of WESU's programming. The station's first official broadcast was on November 9th, 1939. That means they're only a few years away from their 90th anniversary. So, If you find yourself awake and within 90 miles or so of Wesleyan's Exley Science Center, tune in to WESU 88.1 FM. So, unfortunately, since the last time we spoke, things have happened in New Haven. And so I thought maybe it'd be a good idea if we talked just a little bit. For folks who don't know, can you fill them in?
Yeah, so in the last week of July, our clinic, as well as several other programs in Connecticut, were told by their leadership that we would no longer be able to provide services to trans and gender expansive young people under the age of 19. We could still provide mental health care because that's part of our program, but we'd no longer be able to provide any sort of prescriptions for folks or any sort of medication. And so the way that that decision kind of rolled out was that we were told with kind of very short notice, extremely short notice, and our patients were kind of told the next morning.
Patients would show up for their scheduled appointments and find.
So there were letters sent out to folks that kind of shared the news of the decision. They were kind of mailed out before we were told. And so we found out the night before the letters arrived to the patients.
My understanding, and you're in a much better position to know than I am, is that this, for the remaining 3 gender affirming centers here in Connecticut who deal with trans youth, that this is inevitable for them as well. The mandate from the federal government is coming, and it's really just a matter of time. In light of that, is there anything from our previous conversation that you maybe wanted to expand on or shape in a different light?
Yeah, I think, more than anything, just kind of with the current context that we have now, I want to highlight the importance of supporting our young people and what it means to be a good ally, including folks kind of broadly and specifically folks who are in some of these decision-making roles and specifically in healthcare settings. This is the time to be advocating for these programs. This is the time to be really engaging and trying to find the solutions that cause the least harm, because we all understand that nobody would want to make these decisions.
Right.
If it was kind of up to the way it had been before, our programs had been supported. And so I think I want to really encourage folks, especially folks in leadership positions and administrative positions, to really consider the impact of the decisions that are being made on the young people. Really, they're the ones who are going to have to kind of live with these decisions that are drastically changing their lives overnight. And there are ways to go about that. There's a lot of ways that institutions can engage in something called institutional courage. And that really is a trauma-informed practice that helps institutions rebuild trust with populations that they've either caused harm to or there hasn't been a good connection with. And so I think right now what we need is institutional courage. We need organizations to really stand up and defend their programs and find ways to have unique or innovative solutions.
If Yale and these larger institutions are being put in a position of, hey, you're going to lose billions of dollars in funding for other research, for cancer research, for whatever, unless you stop gender affirming care for youth. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. Are there 501(c)(3)s? Are there community organizations that might be able to step up and help in this time?
I think it's challenging. I think there are organizations that can, and they're also under the microscope too right now. And so, I think when I talk about things like institutional courage, I think we all kind of, whether we agree, which I do not, but whether we agree or not with the decisions that were made, we can understand them. I think it's more about the way the decisions are enacted, right? How are those decisions made? Who was in the room when the decisions were made to help bring light to, the impact of the decisions, and how do we deliver news like this to young people who are already vulnerable? They're living in a very scary world. How do we deliver these messages with the most care, with the most consideration, with the most sensitivity, and respect for them as people?
Yeah. Because on the one hand, you have a community of trans youth from the Connecticut area, but we have told people across the country we are going to be a sanctuary state for you. And I'm now imagining a parent who, in order to make sure their kid is alive and healthy and has a future, has packed up everything, sold the house, left the job, gotten in the U-Haul and come up to Connecticut, and now is going to be faced with the fact that, at best, we're going to have to do some real dancing in order to get you what we told you would get here.
Yeah, and I think it was really clear. So Connecticut's Attorney General actually did a really wonderful press conference and, kind of made it clear that, our intention is to remain a sanctuary state. And it's really antithetical to that intention to have programs be, refusing the services that folks need to live and to function and, to be authentically who they are. And so I think like right now, this is a very tricky time for all of us. And, I think that's why we do need these innovative solutions. This is why we do need, folks to have more inclusive decision-making committees and task force and all of these things. Because if there are folks in the room who can understand the impact, who can speak to that impact, there can be more informed decision-making, and the enaction of those decisions can, be made a little more trauma-informed, a little more humanistic.
What is the mood of, since you're allowed to continue with the mental health services, what is the mood of the kids coming in the wake of this? Are they more concerned? Are they more adamant that, okay, I'm going to have to stand up for what I want? What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
So I think by and large, our young people are incredible and intelligent. And they were kind of like, yeah, we had some inklings. We're not dumb. We're very informed. But it didn't stop the devastation. It doesn't stop the fear that happens for them. And we've seen a lot of folks, because this was kind of done, the decision was enacted in such a way that, folks learned about it very quickly and didn't really have time to like discuss or decompress. Folks initially had some pretty strong reactions. We had folks who had never engaged in self-harm before come into clinic on that, following day with self-harm scars. And so these decisions like are really, really impacting these kids. And still they're so resilient. They're so bright. And so many of them have said that they refuse to be erased. They refuse to let people take away their joy, to let people take away their families. And it's really so powerful and such a humbling experience to be in the room with them. So deeply humbling to see like these young people who have already been through so much in their lives, really holding on to this hope and saying, no, I'm not going to be erased. Our community's not going to be erased. Like, we'll find a way through it.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
I would, apropos of nothing, I would just like to point out that Transqat, oh, there we go, is selling the "Don't Cave" sticker. which you should feel free to buy and slap all over any place that might be thinking of caving. Thank you so much for coming back. Coming up next on Transqat, we have a conversation with Lucian Keegle, the writer and artist of a graphic novel called Spill the Tea, a story guidebook on gender identity.
I think a lot about having conversations with people. I haven't had a lot of conversations with people about this topic who have necessarily disagreed with me, but I think a lot about people have very strong opinions, even if they don't realize it. Like, they are their own person, and just because someone says, well, this is my experiences, they're not going to be receptive to that, at least immediately. And I wanted a character that at the foremost was realistic in that sense. And I also had her be skeptical because of that, and also because I wanted her to be able to ask questions. And Clementine is a very headstrong individual, so because of that, she's not afraid to be rude.
If you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Meade, and I hope you did, check out these episodes in the Transqat archive. Episode 82 offers more discussion of mental health in the trans community with our friends over at Prism Counseling. In episode 34, I spoke with Katie Tierney of Middlesex Health about gender-affirming care. And for a compelling conversation with another trans man, check out episode 62 with wrestler and MMA fighter Mac Beggs. A few housekeeping items. Last episode, I said that Worcester Pride on September 6th was going to be the final Pride event of Transqat's season. I lied. Come visit the Transqat tent at Madison Pride tomorrow, September 13th, and that will be the final event of the season. On Wednesday, October 8th, I'll be presenting a virtual program on digital literacy for the Bloomfield Public Library. It's entitled Check Your Sources, Transgender Topics in the News. You can register at bplct.org. The week of September 23rd is Bisexual Awareness Week. We're working on putting together an episode for later this season on bisexuality. If you belong to a bi support group, please reach out and let us know.
This is Sadie McCarthy. I'm Claire's niece.
And you've just been listening to Transqat. It is made by one of my favorite people in the world, Clare McCarthy.
Transqat is a production of Transqat Enterprises, LLC.
Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.
Join us on the web at transqat.com.
That's TRANSQAT.com.
QAT.com.
QAT.com.
There you'll find links to Transqat, the blog,
writing projects,
speaking engagements,
and our PayPal donations page.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monkeys.
Your monies.
Your monies.
Not monkeys.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monies. Any monkeys will be gratefully received as well.
Follow Transqat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
On TikTok, we are at The Real Transqat.
Want to tell your story on air?
Or ask Claire a question?
What is the deal?
She has all the answers.
Or suggest a guest or topic for an upcoming episode.
Use the contact page at the website
or email her directly at crmtranscat@gmail.com.
crmtranscat@gmail.com.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.